Hello Desert Bearhawk fans, back in the shop, and I'm doing a video at the request of some of my followers, and today we're going to be talking about joggle blocks. Now I know that you've seen me mention the joggle blocks many times on the thread on Facebook, and maybe some of you are wondering what the heck is a joggle block, what the heck is a joggle. And for those who know what the joggle is and have heard of joggle blocks, they're asking to see the joggle block in action, see me joggle a rib. So what I'm going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what a joggle block is. So these are both joggle blocks that I made, and I apologize in advance for the auto-focusing of the camera when the shiny surface gets towards the lens. It kind of freaks it out, but if you can see, and I'll bring it up real close, hopefully you can see right in there, there's a depression that's milled. So this block is flat, and then there's a depression that's milled down in the block. You can see it right there on that one, and right there on that one. And that depression is about 45 thousandths of an inch down from this surface here. So the idea is, and what a joggle does, is it allows two pieces of metal, let me grab another piece of metal here, two pieces of metal to sit on top of each other like this. See if I can illustrate this. And you can see right now, you know, one piece is clearly on top of the other, and there's a lip here where the edge of this piece ends. But when you put a joggle in there, you put a little depression so that when these two pieces are sitting together, there's no lip here. You joggle this piece down, and then this piece can nest into it, and you don't have that ridge or that edge there. And that's important because when we have our main ribs here, our center ribs, when the spar comes, so let me grab a joggle block. When the spar comes up and over this, because the spar is a C-shaped channel of bent aluminum, so imagine this bent into a C shape, this is going to sit and it's going to nest right in there, like so, like so. And the reason that we want to joggle is because we want the top of the metal that's sitting in there to be flush with the top of the rib here, because there's going to be a piece of aircraft skin that sits over the top of all of that, like so. And if you've got a little hump here, you're going to see that in your skin. Follow what I'm getting at? I think you probably are. So, in order to nest these ribs properly into the spar, you have to put a joggle on this end right here. And I know it's really hard. This one's got one in there. It's really hard to see it. But that's the purpose of the joggle block, is that you use this block and you put your rib, unjoggled rib right here, put your rib in there and you kind of line everything up, and then you beat the metal down into the depression, and that forms your joggle. So these two joggle blocks I made, this one here was made out of, I don't know what type of material this is, but it is hard. It took about an hour and a half on the mill to mill in that 45 thousandths on there. This stuff, I don't know if it came from Krypton or what, but I don't even know where I got this piece of metal, but it is hard. Hard. Don't recommend that. What I do recommend is you go to your local hardware store, your supply store, and you get a piece of key stock. And it's square stock. This is 5/8 key stock. And I got this piece for $9, this big long 5/8 inch piece. And the reason I have a 5/8 inch piece is because I went through a lot of trouble to make this joggle block, but it won't fit into these smaller ribs. So I had to make a second smaller one. If you only can make one, make the small one. You can use it for all the ribs. But if if you can, or if you feel compelled, you can get probably a 1 inch square block of key stock as well, and take it to a machine shop, and they can mill you in about 1 1/4 inch wide, 45 thousandths deep depression in there, and just kind of round out the edges with the cutter, then take it home and clean it up on your buffer wheel to get all the sharp edges off of it because you don't want to scratch your aluminum, and you'll have a joggle block. So those are the 2 joggle blocks I made, and I'm going to move the camera, so I'm going to shut you off, turn you back on over at the vise, and I'm going to actually joggle a rib and show you how I do it. It's pretty easy, and I know I struggled with it a lot. I kind of thought about it way more than I should have. Should have just done it and I would have realized how easy it is. So I'm going to move us over to the vise and we'll pick it up from there. Okay, here we are with the vise, and let me show you what I did with my vise to make this easier. What I did first is I removed the jaws of the reversible jaws that they have in there. I removed those, and the reason I did that is, let me zoom in here, see if you can see it. These jaws, they sit on a little depression, a little notch in there. So this notch inside the vise here supports these jaws. It also does a pretty dang good job of supporting this block too, because when you're beating down on it, let's go back out wide. When you're beating down on this block, it's going to want to drive through the vise, but this little notch, this little shelf in here holds it. So first thing I did is I removed the 2 jaw pieces. Then I cut a piece of MDF just to sit on the opposite jaw, so I would have a soft material to clamp against my rib when I clamped it. So then I just taped it in there with some Blem Durham tape so it doesn't move and it stays put in place. Then what I do is I know that my joggle's got to be at least 1.25 inches, so I kind of measured it. Initially I measured it to this and put this blue piece of tape on there for a tape line, but what I'm finding is that the fluting I put in the rib right here is pretty much right at the same spot, so I don't really have to measure too much. So it works out pretty good. Anyways, oh, and finally, this is a Sears Craftsman 6-inch vise I got for $59. I put a post on Facebook about it. $59 for this vise shipped, which they lost their rear end on it because the thing is heavy. But what's nice about it is that these jaws are super wide, so you can slide your piece in quite a bit before you hit the center of the vise. And that's good because you want to make sure that you have your piece fully supported by the jaws when you're beating on it so it doesn't move around. So Duncan Aviation had one. I liked it so much I just bought it for myself so I could do work at home. So what I do is I slide in the joggle block, then I slide the rib into place like so, lining up my little keyway depression here. This one's going to be a little, I'm going to actually joggle this one a little bit longer because I've already got kind of a little depression there. So, and then I want to hold this material flush with this and give it a clamp down like so. Just clamp it, and I'll walk over here and look at it from the other side and make sure that it's sitting in there nice and flush on this part right here where I want it, and it is for the most part. It's not 100%, but you'll know if you look at the material, it should be sitting parallel to the milled depression, but you know, 40 thousandths or so above it because the material hasn't been bent down into shape yet. So I just kind of hold it here and make sure I'm not going to bend that joggle in there all goofy and crooked. You don't want that either. So get it in place, lock my vise down, and then one thing I noticed is when I was beating on the material here, instead of it smushing into the hole, it was smushing out this way, kind of going the least path of resistance every which way it could go. I noticed that on the first couple of ribs. I thought, well, how can I keep it from doing that, because I don't have anything up here to support this. And then I remembered the jaws that I had removed previously. They got a pretty smooth side on them on one side, so what I do is I just stick those jaws in there like that, take a couple of C-clamps and clamp it here, clamp it on the other end like so. And now everything's held nice and tight, so now I can drive this material right into that joggle. So I'll make sure my vise is tight here so it doesn't go flying. and take my trusty dead blow hammer, which I basically wore out on one end completely, joggling the 32 thousandths ribs, which are a heck of a lot more work than these guys are. These are 25 thousandths ribs. And then all I do is I just, first couple of blows, I want to try to drive this material towards the joggle block so I get it down in there where I want it. Same thing you would do when you're building your ribs and beating these in over the form block. And then once you kind of get it going and you kind of just keep smacking it that way, it's simply just a matter of just beating that dang thing down in there. I take a little piece of ply, Cornish ply I got to help me kind of get it to follow the contour of the block. So, and you can already see that one's pretty much joggled right there. I probably beat on them a little more than I should. If you come around the other side, just eyeball it, make sure it's sitting flat in this little gap right here, which this one is. And we are joggled. This rib, at least this side of this rib, has been joggled. And now I can take my 32 thousandths spar. When I bend it, it's just going to sit right up in there like that. And then my simulated wing skin will sit right over the top of it. Just flush, no bumps, no nothing there. Everything sits just flush, and it really, really does look good. So that's what a joggle block is for. That's what I'm doing with the joggle blocks. And that's just how easy it is to get these joggle blocks to do what you need them to do. So, like I said, this one works just exactly the same way as this one does, except for this one isn't as tall, so you don't need to put the little piece of metal in there to back it up, because it's being backed up by this MDF block. I'll take this whole assembly out. And of course, all you do is take it out, flip the rib over, come in from the other side, so you're constantly moving from side to side, and joggle the other side. Piece of cake. Same thing with this guy here. It just sits in there, and you can see that this one actually sits a little bit lower than this backer. So what I do is I put this little piece of plywood in there, kind of shim it up like so. And now, if I had a rib in there, it'd be sitting right even with it, and I could just beat it down and do my thing. So it's basically all there is to joggling. That's what a joggle is, whether you're putting two sheets together or you're joggling the leading edge of these ribs. You just use this little joggle block in depression. I made this one for about $9. Oh, by the way, it took 2 passes on the mill to cut this 45 thousandths out. So this key stock's pretty soft compared to whatever the hell this stuff is. And if you, I'm sure if you go to your local machine shop and tell those guys you're building an airplane, and you could really use some of their expert help if they could run this in their mill and mill you in a depression like that. It'll take them all of about 6 minutes to do it. You throw them a $20 bill and you're on your way. And you could do all the ribs with a block like this. You don't need a big one like I have here. I was just being me, and being me is, you know, go big or stay at home most of the time. So anyways, those are joggle blocks. I hope it kind of enlighten you as to what I'm doing here, and I hope you found it entertaining. And until we have something else to show you, which hopefully will be spars soon, we'll see you in the shop next time.